Election workers I've talked to say Michigan is in the middle of a shift right now as more and more voters are deciding to cast their ballots through the mail rather than in the ballot box.
We have seen increasing numbers, and obviously those numbers jumped in 2020, particularly with the general election. And that's reflective, like I said, that people want choices.
Just in the 2 weeks the option has been open for Michigan voters, more than 875,000 people have requested absentee ballot applications. That's a jump of hundreds of thousands more requests from the same time during the last midterm primary back in 2018, the Secretary of State says. While election workers say absentee ballots make voting more accessible, it puts some hurdles up for election workers in a system that has limitations.
We're just busier. The extra staff comes into play on election day with our election workers. But before that, it's just myself and my deputy clerk.
Every local clerk I talked to today told me they were busy. Most said they were understaffed. Lynette Wolfgang, a township clerk in northern Michigan, says some of the restrictions placed on election workers may need to be adjusted going forward.
Right now, they are working for us. As Blair Township grows, I cannot say that they will always work for us.
The Secretary of State's office, along with some local clerks, have asked lawmakers to put forward legislation that would let them pre-process ballots, not count them, just get them ready to be counted on Election Day.
The biggest thing is that Michigan voters want election results on election night.
The risks of delayed ballot counting due to the pileup of absentee ballots, some election workers say, opens the door to major problems. With an influx of absentee ballots that need to be processed, voters sometimes have to wait hours or even days for election results.
And in that time, election deniers fill the gaps with false conspiracy theories that undermine the elections themselves and ultimately threaten our democracy.
If you live in Genesee County, you can live more comfortably on perhaps lower income.
According to the United States Census Bureau, the median income in Genesee County is roughly $50,000 annually. Chris Douglas, an economics professor at the University of Michigan Flint, says while this study suggests Michiganders need nearly $96,000 to live a comfortable lifestyle, that number varies depending on location.
Living expenses in Genesee County are probably lower than the national average because things like housing they've gone up in price quite a bit over the course of the pandemic, but in terms of compared to the rest of the nation, Genesee County has lower housing expenses than the rest of the nation.
According to Realtor.com, the median housing cost for a home in Genesee County is about $190,000 in the current market. That's taking into account all 19 of the cities inside of Genesee County. Not only that, the study suggests that the term comfortable or happy really equates to how much stress is on a household to pay bills and other expenses, as well as luxury materials.
So I don't think it's the case that $96,000 is what's absolutely necessary for a livable wage. If the key word is comfortably, sure, you're going to be comfortable at that kind of income, but it's probably not what you really need to be able to get by on a day-to-day basis.
According to Go Banking Rate, studies found income correlates to happiness, and about $60,000 to $75,000 is needed for emotional well-being in North America. Douglas tells me it really boils down to personal expenses more so than annual income.
You see studies where people who are making $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck because their expenses are just outpacing their salary, even at a high salary. So it's kind of like no matter how much income you earn, you can always find expenses to match that level of income.
MDOT says that right now they have about 165 construction projects throughout the state of Michigan. For instance, one of their larger projects in the Bay region is the I-69 construction project. But the reason why inflation isn't impacting the cost of construction is because MDOT bids out years in advance. All this road work comes with a cost, from the paint to the cement to the steel used to build bridges. But as this work is costly, right now it's not increasing the cost to MDOT.
We have a couple of different jobs that are happening along I-69. One of those jobs was bid 2.5 years ago. One was bid 1 year ago.
Once that price is locked in, that is what contractors have to be held accountable for. These projects, years in the making, have helped MDOT stay on budget. But it also helps with other facets of the construction construction project.
It allows them to get materials on order. It allows them to line up the number of laborers that they're going to need, to identify a proper progress schedule, things like that.
When it seems like orange barrels are everywhere you look, MDOT says keeping to a schedule is crucial. Otherwise, it can be quite frustrating for drivers.
So for a lot of our projects, we might require that they not be working on a north and south route over a weekend, because we know that that really significantly impacts tourism traffic.
MDOT plans for 5 to 10 years in advance. The planning allows them to know what the cost will be. Sometimes, though, it can be challenging to predict. Right now, the cost of inflation is not impacting these projects, but for the future,
we may have to reduce the scope of that project. So, what maybe was going to be 5 miles of construction now becomes 2.5 miles of construction, because we just simply don't have the money in our budget to cover that steep of an increase.
While the cost of inflation isn't directly impacting MDOT right now, they say that the contractors ultimately feel the brunt of these high inflation costs.